Hello YouTube, what's going on? It's Snowflarky Zemos, and I'm here today with my silent Lightsworn deck. Basically what that means is this is a Lightsworn engine that I am using in order to play the Silent Magician and the Silent Swordsman that came out of Duelist Pack Rivals of the Pharaoh. For a little context, the level cards are some of my favorite in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! I remember Soul of the Duelist specifically it has pretty much been my favorite set ever to open up in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just had a lot of fun with it. I thought the level monsters were awesome, so when these two cards came out, they became a must pick up for my collection. And while, they haven't had much playability, they do have pretty powerful effects. And I was just thinking to myself one day, well, what is a deck that I could possibly run both Silent Magician and Swordsman in, and Lightsworn with its combination of milling and, of course, having spellcasters and warriors available to them in the deck just ended up being just the obvious synergy. And so I have put together this deck that is one of my favorite for picking up and playing at duel night with the friends. Very cool, a little inconsistent, but a lot of fun to be able to use these silent cards. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing two copies of Silent Magician. This is one of the two new silent cards that came out in Rivals of the Pharaoh. Well, I say new, but it's been a while since they came out. Anyway, Silent Magician is a card that you special summon to your side of the field by attributing a spellcaster type monster, which is something Lightsworn has plenty of. And, while it's on the field, it gains 500 attack for every card in your hand. So it comes on the board with 1,000 attack. As long as you have two cards in your hand, you have 2,000 attack, which is pretty solid. And, of course, it can get even larger, which is pretty nice. But the real powerful effect on this card that both this one and the Silent Swordsman have is that once per turn, during either player's turn, when a spell card is activated, you can negate the activation. Now, we all know spell cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are huge, incredibly powerful stuff that either get your combo started or, it's a powerful board wipe like Lightning Storm or Raigeki. Negating spells is always pretty good, so having a monster that can just do that is pretty awesome. But also, if this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card in its owner's control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon a Silent Magician monster from your hand or deck, except Silent Magician, ignoring its summoning conditions. So, despite the ability to negate spell cards and already have a powerful effect like that, it also floats into another monster when it is destroyed, which is pretty cool. The monster, of course, that we will be floating into is our one copy of Silent Magician level 8. Silent Magician level 8 is a 3,500 attack monster that would normally have to be special summoned by the effect of Silent Magician level 4. But Silent Magician ignores summoning conditions, so we don't have to worry too much about that. And essentially, it's a 3,500 attack monster that is unaffected by your opponent's spell effects, which is pretty cool. Not the greatest, though, which is why we're only playing one copy, and that is a risk just because in a Lightsworn where we're mill, we're not guaranteed that we're not going to mill Silent Magician, but that's alright because mostly we want Silent Magician on its field for its spell negation effect. This is just a bonus if it's still in the deck and our Silent Magician is removed. So, I've wavered playing one or two copies of this card, but I've settled on one just because it is not necessarily the bigger of the two silent payoffs. Next up for our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Silent Swordsman. Silent Swordsman is, in this deck, I would say, and in general, just kind of on its own, I would consider the better of the two cards. Silent Magician, of course, has just a lot of splashability and spellcaster decks that I think has given it more playtime. But, in a vacuum, Silent Swordsman reads like a better card. So this one has to be special summoned by attributing a warrior type monster. And basically once per turn during the standby phase, this includes both your and your opponent's standby phase, it gains 500 attack. So he starts at 1,000. On your opponent's turn, he'll have 1,500. So he is low attack on the first opponent's turn, which is something that you kind of have to deal with. During either player's turn, when a spell card is activated, you can negate the activation. So again, Silent Swordsman also has the really powerful spell negation effect that Magician has. And when this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Silent Swordsman monster other than Silent Swordsman from your hand or deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. So also contains Silent Magician's awesome, powerful floating effect. Lightsworns also have Warriors access, so it's not hard to get that as well. And so we play 3 of this card. We want to see it, and we definitely are cool with it floating. Now, Silent Swordsman will float into our Silent Swordsman level 7. A Silent Swordsman level 7 is an incredibly powerful monster, 2,800 attack. Would normally have to be summoned by the effect of Silent Swordsman level 5, but we can ignore that with our Silent Swordsman. And essentially what this card says is negate all spell effects on the field. So once you float into Silent Swordsman, all spells are just negated. None are going to resolve. And that is incredibly powerful. I mean, especially in matchups, if your opponent really needs their spells to get things going, you will just auto win. And they have to deal with a spell negate before when it's Silent Swordsman, but if they remove that, trying to get around it, well, you're just going to summon level 7. Silent Swordsman is it's an incredibly good payoff. Definitely one that we want to float into, so I'm playing 2 copies just to hopefully keep one in the deck available to float off of. And that is the role of Silent Swordsman. Next up, we're getting into our Lightsworn cards. I am playing 3 copies of Lumina. Lumina, one of the very powerful Lightsworns, of course. Once per turn, you can discard a card to target a level 4 or lower Lightsworn monster in your graveyard. Special summon the target. Always note that with Lumina, that as long as you have a Lightsworn in the graveyard already for its effect, you can even discard the Lightsworn monster that you want to special summon. And then special summon that one because it takes place in that sequence. You just have to have a Lightsworn in your grave that can be before you can activate that part of effect. And then, of course, once per turn during the end phase, send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So that all the Lightsworns are based around milling like that, and works pretty well with this deck because the spell cards for the 2 silent monsters get benefits off of being milled. So something we're happy to see. So we summon Lumina, we special summon another Lightsworn, and we go off to the races from there. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Raiden, Hand of the Lightsworn. This is our main warrior target to be tributing off for Silent Swordsman, but this is also just a pretty cool card. Raiden, during your main phase, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard, and if any of them are Lightsworn monsters, this card gains 200 attack for each. So that is pretty cool. Also, another thing to note about Raiden in general is that it's a tuner, so that opens up synchro options for you in this deck. I will say out the gate, this is not a very extra deck heavy build of Lightsworn because we're mostly instead using our targets to tribute for multiple silent monsters for multiple spell negations. And then, of course, once per turn during your end phase, you send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So this card, his ability to manually mill some cards is pretty nice. His ability to go into synchros, his ability to be a warrior for Silent Swordsman, definitely a lot of uses. So we want to play 3 of this card because I want to see it. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Wolf, the Lightsworn Beast. 2100 attack monster, cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned by a card effect, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. If this card is sent from your deck to the graveyard, special summon it. So if this card is sent off of a Lightsworn mill, or you Foolish Burial it, you can just special summon this card. And definitely something we want because the extra 2100 attack on board oftentimes gives us enough damage to push for game. So it's definitely a card I want to see. Next up, I'm playing one copy of Felis, Lightsworn Archer. Not one of the most popular ones, but a pretty good one. It's also a tuner, which is pretty nice. Like Wolf, you can't normal summon or set this, and it must be special summoned by a card effect. Of course, if this card is sent from your deck to the graveyard, you get to special summon it, very much like Wolf. Now, it doesn't have Wolf's 2100 attack, but it does have this awesome effect. You contribute this card to target one monster your opponent controls, destroy that target, then send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So a nice way to pop a monster and to get some more mills off, which is something we definitely want to have access to in this deck. Just because we want to be milling the silent spell cards. So, Felis is a fine thing to have at one copy there. Next, I'm playing one copy of Minerva, Lightsworn Maiden. This is another spellcaster, which makes it a viable target for Silent Magician. And when this card is normal summoned, you would normally be able to add a dragon type light monster from your deck to your hand. But we're not doing that effect at all. The only thing we need to worry about on Minerva is that if this card was sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard, you can send the top card of your deck to the graveyard as well. So it just means that if you mill Minerva, you're going to get an extra mill. Pretty cool. That's definitely what we want to do with it, and that's enough reason to play it as a one of. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Lila, Lightsworn Sorceress. Lila is, of course, nice because you can target a spell or trap card on the field and shift this card's battle position, and if you do, destroy it. So we have a form of spell and trap removal in here, and then, of course, at the end phase, it mills 3 cards. And a cool thing about Lila is that it's a spellcaster, so it can be tributed for Silent Magician. And yeah. Next up, moving off of Lightsworn, I am playing 2 copies of Performage Trick Clown. Trick Clown is a pretty cool card with Lightsworn because if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a Performage monster in your graveyard, special summon it, its attack and defense becomes 0, and you take 1,000 damage. So that's pretty cool. You can only use the effect of Trick Clown once per turn. What's nice about this is a monster we can special summon freely off of a mill, and it's a level 4 monster, which gives us rank 4 Xyz plays. It's also a spellcaster, which gives us a viable target to tribute off for Silent Magician. Just very cool overall, and for that reason, glad to have it in the deck. Next up, I'm playing 1 copy of Heroic Challenger 1000 Blades. This is the Blades part of the Clown Blade engine. 1000 Blades is nice because it essentially has an effect that if this card is in your graveyard and you take damage once per turn, you can special summon this card onto the field. That's pretty sweet. It works pretty well because if it's in your graveyard and you mill Trick Clown and you special summon Trick Clown and you take 1,000 damage, well, you're getting 1,000 blades back too. And that's nice because those are 2 level 4s, which let you go into a rank 4 XZ. And also, 1,000 blades is a warrior, which is real nice because that means it is a target we can be tributing for our silent swordsman. So awesome part of that, and definitely has me considering bumping Trick Clown up to 3. Next up, I'm playing a copy of Honest. Honest is just a nice card for light monster decks because when your light monster does battle, you can discard Honest from your hand and your light monster gains attack equal to the attack of the monster it is attacking. So pretty much means that you're going to win the battle for sure. Definitely a card that is worth considering having an extra copy or 2 of because this card can protect your silent swordsman or your silent magician while it's on the field with lower attack, which is pretty cool, but I don't know. Normally negating spells, and I'm not even worried about them getting destroyed too much because they float into pretty good monsters. So for that reason, I'm only using the 1 Honest at this time. And next up, a card I enjoy using in Lightsworn, one copy of Electromagnetic Turtle. It's a level 4 monster, which is nice for some Xyz plays. And of course, during your opponent's battle phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, end the battle phase. And this is a quick effect. You can only use this effect of Electromagnetic Turtle once per duel. So, has the ability to skip a battle phase of your opponent's just for getting milled. That's pretty awesome. If it's stuck in your hand, it's still level 4 for a rank 4 Xyz play, etc. So it's a pretty good card. This card, I would argue, definitely consider switching out for another copy of Trick Clown just to get the Trick Clowns going, or Honest, something like that. But, it's a fun card, and it certainly has come in handy. So it doesn't have, it's not without its merits. And that is it for our monsters. Next up, going with our spell cards, I am playing 2 copies of Silent Burning. This is the Silent Magician spell that came out in Rivals of the Pharaoh. It says during the battle phase, if you control a Silent Magician monster and have more cards in your hand than your opponent, each player draws until they have 6 cards in their hand. And this card's activated effect, card effect cannot be negated, which is pretty cool. So the thing about that first effect is you'll never really use it unless you're attacking with Silent Magician, and the attack you would gain from having 6 cards in your hand, which would be a 4,000 attack Silent Magician, will end the game. Otherwise, giving your opponent so many cards, especially since you have to already be ahead on hand advantage, is almost never a good thing. So definitely not a useful effect in most scenarios. But the real reason we play this card is that if this card is in our graveyard, you can banish it to add a Silent Magician monster from your deck to your hand. So that means if we mill this card off of a Lightsworn effect, we can just banish it and add a silent card to our graveyard. To our hand, which of course is Silent Magician if we don't have it. If we have a Silent Magician and we want to make sure we don't mill level 8 to float into, we can grab a level 8. So it's just pretty cool. Generates card advantage. It's nice to get out the mills, and one of the reasons Lightsworn works so well with it. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Silent Sword Slash. This is the one for Silent Swordsman, and this card is a little more useful than Silent Burning on its own. You essentially can target a Silent Swordsman monster you control. That monster you control gains 1500 attack and defense, and this is, of course, a permanent stat gain. It's not till the end of the turn, which is nice. Immediately puts a Silent Swordsman with that only 1,000 attack up to 25, which makes it a lot more menacing. And of course, until the end of this turn, it is unaffected by your opponent's card effects. So it also becomes unaffected by your opponent's card effects. A very powerful effect for any monster to have. And while it only has that one till the end of the turn, it still can be pretty useful at dodging some effects. This card's activation and effect cannot be negated, which is pretty cool. And like Silent Burning, it also has this effect that if this card is in the graveyard, you can banish it to add a Silent Swordsman monster from your deck to your hand. So we use this to grab Silent Swordsman if it gets milled. If we already have Silent Swordsman and we want to grab a 7, we can grab that as well. Definitely a cool card to be playing, and glad to have it. I like that its first effect is useful. Next, I'm playing a copy of Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods just allows us to send a spell or trap from our deck to the graveyard. So we can send Silent Burning or Silent Sword Slash to the graveyard and get its search right away, especially if we want one of those. So pretty cool option to have. We can only use 1 Foolish Burial Goods per turn. Next up, I'm playing Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial sends a monster from our deck to the graveyard, so we can use this to get, there's a number of different monsters that we would want in our graveyard per se. Raiden is a big one if we need it in the grave to summon off of Lumina to play Silent Swordsman. That's pretty big. Sending Wolf just gives us a free special summon. Sending Felis gives us a free special summon. Trick Clown gets us an extra body on board. And of course, you can use it to load Thousand Blades into the grave. So definitely a great card for this deck. So many targets, so many different uses. You gotta play it. Next up, one of the great Lightsworn starters. It's our 3 copies of Charge of the Light Brigade. Send the top 3 cards of our deck to the graveyard and add a level 4 or lower Lightsworn monster from the deck to the hand. This one is pretty sweet. It mills cards for us, which is pretty nice. It's not once per turn, which is really nice, and it gets us a Lightsworn, so we can add whichever one we need. Whether we need a target for our silent monsters, whether we need Lumina to get things going. That tends to be the biggest things you'll search off of it. So pretty awesome. Yep, must have at 3. Next, to help move the deck along and maybe unclog some bad hands, I am playing 3 copies of Solar Recharge. With Solar Recharge, we discard a Lightsworn monster to draw 2 cards and then send the top 2 cards of our deck to the graveyard. So it replaces the cards that we're sending out of our hand with 2 other cards, which is nice. And of course, it mills us 2 cards, which can gain us card advantage, get us key targets in the grave. Definitely things we want for this deck, and very awesome to have. And lastly, I am playing 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. Just turn it into a 39 card deck. Giving your opponent 1,000 extra life isn't that big of a deal when you're just going to be negating spell cards and maybe shutting them out of the game that way. And of course, we can pile on lots of damage pretty quickly. So just figured having another card to filter through the deck is pretty good. And let's talk about the 1 trap card I'm playing in this deck. I am playing a copy of Beckoning Light. Certainly a little bit of an outdated card, but Beckoning Light is, you know, it still feels good to resolve this card in this version of the deck specifically, because you can, you know, get things out of your hand that you don't want, and you can replace it with an ideal hand of light monsters from your graveyard. You know, say you milled all your silent cards, you know, you can add some of those back so that they're live again, switch out some cards in your hand that are dead, just things like that, and that makes it pretty nice. Yeah, I mean, you'll mill this card a good amount, and you won't always activate it. So, you know, if you're building a deck like this, you could definitely consider swapping this for something else. But I'm still liking Beckoning Light at 1. It does pretty, you know, it's you know, I've made some powerful swings with that card by restacking the hand to be more favorable. And that is it for our main deck. Next, taking a look at our extra deck, I am playing 2 copies of Michael the Arc Lightsworn. The big synchro payoff here, a level 7 synchro, which means Lumina and either Felis or Raiden can make this, or any of your other level 4 Lightsworns with your 1 Minerva can make this, which is pretty cool. Once per turn, you can pay 1,000 life points, target a card on the field, and banish that target. It's pretty cool. I mean, it does target, which is a little weak, but it is banish removal, which is nice, better than destroying, better than sending things to the graveyard. Certainly comes in handy. And of course, when this card is destroyed, you can target any number of Lightsworn monsters in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and if you do, you gain 300 life points for each. You know, pretty cool. It can get some Lightsworns back in the deck if you need them back in the deck for some reason. And of course, can get you some life if you're low on life, and that can make a different maker. So, you know, the effect comes in handy sometimes. And of course, during each of your end phases, you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So also further mill, you know, it's got 2600 attack. It's a pretty good card to run a couple copies of. Next, I'm playing 1 copy of Minerva, the Exalted Lightsworn. This is a rank 4 XVs that requires 2 level 4 monsters. You can detach a material from this card to send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So more ability for us to mill. That's definitely something we like. Then we draw cards equal to the number of Lightsworn cards sent to the graveyard by this card effect. So if you mill Lightsworns, you draw some cards. Awesome. Another great benefit. Pretty sweet. And then if this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, and then you can destroy cards on the field up to the number of Lightsworn cards sent by this effect. So all really powerful effects. Minerva is a great way to get things moving if you don't already have the cards to do so and can summon 2 level 4s. Um, so it's just an awesome card. I'd even consider playing more if I had more copies of it, but I only have the one at this time. If you have more, I definitely recommend maybe throwing another copy in there, because I've certainly found myself in a number of moments where I would like to activate and resolve more than one over the course of a game. Those are the Lightsworn specific extra deck, and usually the go-tos. The rest of my extra deck is just rank 4 good stuff. Um, I don't have much of a Link extra deck built at this time, so do keep that in mind. And of course, as a casual deck, um, I haven't invested too much in the extra deck on this one, especially since, for the most part, you don't do too many extra deck plays because you're tributing your monsters instead for the silent cards. Playing one copy of Baguska, rank 4 that requires 2 level 4s. You summon it in defense. All monsters go to defense, and their effects cannot be activated while in defense. So it basically gives you skill drain on a body for 2 turns. That's pretty nice. Next up, 2 copies of Tornado Dragon. Requires 2 level 4s. Once per turn during either player's turn, detach a material to destroy a spell or trap on the field. Pretty good, powerful effects. We like that. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Castel the Skyblaster Musketeer. Requires 2 level 4s, and you can detach 2 materials from this card to shuffle a face-up card on the field into the deck. You could also detach 1 material to do like a Book of Moon effect, but it's never really useful for that effect. We're mostly just using it for that shuffle effect. Next up, playing 2 copies of Abyss Dweller. Abyss Dweller is pretty nice because once per turn during either player's turn, we can detach material from this card, and your opponent cannot activate the effects of cards in the graveyard, which is pretty sweet. You know, that's pretty powerful in a game where lots of graveyard effects are going off. Awesome. Next, we're playing a copy of Divine Arsenal AA Zeus, the XZ powerhouse himself. So it says 2 level 12 monsters, but of course there's an alternate way to summon it. Once per turn, if an XZ monster battled this turn, you can also XZ summon this card by using that monster you control as material, and you transfer its materials to this card as well. So that's pretty nice. And then, of course, it gives it the quick effect. You can detach 2 materials from this card to send all other cards from the field to the graveyard. So, you know, a quick effect board wipe like that is not destructive. Awesome. And then, of course, once per turn, if another card you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can attach 1 card from your hand, deck, or extra deck to this card as material. So it has another way to generate materials. May be able to give you multiple access to Zeus. So pretty cool. But so yeah, just attack with an XZ, throw Zeus on it, then you have the ability to quick effect wipe an opponent's board in a non-destruction way, which is pretty sweet. I'm playing 1 copy of Gaga Cowboy. You know, Lightsworn swarm a lot of monsters and they do a lot of damage, but sometimes you may be 800 life points short of an OTK, and in that case, 2 level 4s in main phase 2 can make Cowboy, which you can detach 1 to do 800 life point damage, and that still comes up enough that I give Cowboy a slot. Next, I'm playing a copy of Dark Rebellion XZ's Dragon. 2500 attack, requires 2 level 4s. You can detach 2 materials from this card, target a face-up monster your opponent controls. Its attack becomes half its current attack, and this card gains that half of the attack, which is pretty sweet. Let you battle over anything and give you a really large monster. Next, I am playing a copy of Heartland Draco. Heartland Draco requires 2 level 4s, and if you detach a material, you can select Heartland Draco, and this card can attack directly this turn. In exchange, none of your other monsters can attack, but if your opponent's got you walled off and they're at 2,000 or less life points, and you just need to skip their monsters and attack directly, you can make a Heartland Draco and do so. And then lastly, I'm playing a copy of Silent Honor Arc, 2 level 4 monsters. Detach 2 materials from this card. Target a special summon monster your opponent controls and face up attack position and attach it to this card. And then of course, once per turn, if this face-up card on the field would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can detach 1 material from it instead. So pretty cool. You can go into this over Castel if the card you want to get rid of is a monster. So do know that that's just the rest of the rank 4s that I'm playing at this time. I will say that given how many 4s are accessible, I'm considering playing a Utopia double package with double or nothing, just because it gives you another win condition to attack over a monster. You know, I could replace Beckoning Light with double or nothing, easily switch out some of the excess double XZs that I have in here for a copy of Utopia and Utopia Double. Something to keep in mind. You can definitely flesh out the extra deck with a more full and appropriately powerful extra deck that Lightsworns are capable of. It's just something I don't have at this time, and you know, I haven't gone with it because it doesn't fully envision the purpose of this deck, which is to summon the Silence. So with that said, that is it for my silent deck profile. This has always been one of my favorite decks to play casually. Now it has a lot of the issues that a real pure Lightsworn build has, which is where you can brick or you can get bad mills. So there's a little bit of variance in RNG where you'll sometimes just lose to yourself. But you can also get off really powerful plays. It's not hard to have both, if not even 3 copies of a silent monster on the field by the end of your first turn. Definitely all doable, and the silent cards are very powerful. The ability to negate spells is huge, and that just makes this deck pretty awesome. One of my favorites, one of my, I would say, proudest casual creations. Um, yeah, I'll do anything to play more level monsters. So let me know, which one do you like better, Silent Swordsman or Silent Magician? Let me know what you think. I appreciate you checking out this deck profile. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.